just stop and have a look at this one. Yeah, I don't think he's supposed to do that. Just having a look. Look at the amount of difference. It's almost like a 1.2 metre drop or like rise in the water. The amount of whitewash that's coming through here is just crazy. That's pretty cool. Yes, is it? Not that I know of. I think they just sit around where you go. Yeah, I think they just stop and have a look at it.
Maybe getting a run up, you know? You think?
I doubt it. That was pretty cool.
What do we reckon about that, folks?
Oh yeah.
Pretty unreal.
Yep.
Bit of an adrenaline rush.
Bloody hell.
How about the skills from the skipper back there behind the wheel, getting through those whitewater gaps? Big shout out to Tommy, folks. Oh, how good was that? Team, it's pretty hard to believe or comprehend that what we're witnessing here is purely caused by the tides. I reckon if you saw this for the first time and had absolutely no idea what was going on, there's no way your first thought would be that this is the outgoing tide right now. You'd be assuming that in particular, that narrow gap, that has to be some sort of waterfall falling over a big rock ledge, or this has to be some sort of freshwater river system running down a mountain. But no, in 6 hours time, that's not going to be a 3 metre wall of water pouring towards us. It's going to be a 3 metre wall of water pouring in the opposite direction with the incoming tide. Same with that wide gap. Just as much current, just as much flow, but coming the other way. This place purely operates on either the incoming or the outgoing tide. And what that means is, if you haven't been here before, which I know most of you folks haven't, you've never seen anything like it. This place is totally unique. This is the world's very best example of a pinch point rapid that is purely generated by the tides, and there is daylight between first and second. This is the only place on the planet where you'll witness this, and that is certainly not my own conclusion or my own theory, but that of Sir David Attenborough, and he's been to a few different places around the world. I reckon he knows what he's talking about. He first came here in 1996, and he was absolutely sure back then that you won't find this anywhere else, and that remains true to this day. There's good reason why he refers to this place, and I quote, as Australia's most unusual natural phenomenon and the 8th wonder of the world, a place that people must see. Pretty strong words coming from David Attenborough. Now, if you were here on pretty much any other day of this swing that we're in right now, there would be a massive cruise ship out there in the bay, and they would have put 15 or 20 little Zodiac tenders into the water, and we'd be sharing the falls with all of them at the same time. We'd be sitting outside waiting for our turn. The radios would be going crazy. There'd be wake everywhere. But this morning, we've got the place absolutely all to ourselves, which is pretty special, I reckon. Now, the reason why you're seeing these incredible whitewater rapids generate, folks, well, a few things had to happen for this to occur. First of all, Talbot Bay right now is connected obviously back out to the Indian Ocean, and it's dropping faster than what this middle sea can keep up with. This middle sea is dropping faster than what that inland sea can keep up with. Reason being, these embayments are completely landlocked, other than a 20 metre gap and a 7 metre gap. What you're looking at is the only pathway connecting these bodies of water back out to the Indian Ocean. So that's the first thing that had to occur. Only one pathway back to the open ocean. Second thing is that these gaps had to be really nice and narrow, relatively speaking. You've only got 20 metres and 7 metres for quite literally hundreds of billions of litres of water that have to traverse in or out of here in a 6-hour period. And the third thing that had to happen was we had to have a place where you get massive tidal variations. So the Kimberley has the second largest tidal variations on the entire planet. Specifically, that's in Derby, which is about 80 kilometres away from here. A couple of days ago, they had a 12 metre variation between their high and low tide. We had about a 10.5 metre variation. And today, we've got an 8.6 metre variation between our high and low tide. Hobart this morning has a 23 centimetre variation between their high and low tide. We get massive tides up here compared to anywhere else in Australia and pretty much anywhere else in the world. So the reason why this is happening is that water that is trying to escape at an equal rate is getting banked up. It can't traverse through equally, so it's being compressed and funneled, generating that incredible whitewater rapid. If there were gaps all the way through these escarpments connecting back out to the open ocean, there's a good chance all of these bodies would be able to drop at the same rate, but they simply cannot do it. Now, what's going to happen over the next couple of hours is pretty phenomenal. We reach our low tide in about 40 minutes time. Once Talbot Bay stops dropping, this middle sea here will catch up pretty quickly. It'll finish draining all of its water, and that wide gap there will equalise within about 30 minutes after the change of tide. It'll go dead flat once it catches up. That doesn't look like it's going to stop flowing anytime soon over at that narrow gap. Narrow gap doesn't catch up until about an hour and a half after the change of tide, meaning by the time it's caught up and equalised, Talbot Bay has already begun to start rising again. So when that finally catches up, it goes dead flat. It's like a pane of glass with no current in either direction. Hard to picture when you're seeing it looking like that. It stays like that, dead flat, for about 30 to 35 seconds before it has to instantly react to the tide that's already begun to rise again. It's like a massive seesaw domino effect in here. It sort of defies physics, what we're witnessing here at the Horizontal Falls. Now, team, not only is this area a jaw-dropping scientific phenomenon that you won't see anywhere else in the world, but it's also it's an incredibly sacred part of the Kimberley, and it's got a really beautiful culture and a really rich history as well. So this area is actually traditionally known as Garaanngaddim, and it belongs to the Garaanngaddim people. So the Garaanngaddim people are a saltwater mob. They've been traversing these waters right here for over 50,000 years. And the reason why Garaanngaddim is such a sacred area is that it's the centerpiece of their dream time. So their dream time is their belief system. And within that belief system, the world comes from what's called a creation serpent, or a rainbow serpent. So from that rainbow serpent is how everything you see came to be. But not only that, the sun that's going to set tonight, the stars that will appear, all the beautiful wildlife you'll find around here, and the massive tides we receive up here in the Kimberley all came from that creation serpent. And the white water that traverses through the gaps here at Garaanngaddim represents the spirit of that creation serpent. So right now, with the outgoing tide, it's leaving its place of rest within that inland sea to carve its way throughout the Kimberley and Australia, spreading creation and dream time along the way. But on the incoming tide, it will return to its place of rest within that inland sea. Now, a couple of years ago, up until 2022, this company and others did used to traverse through that narrow gap over there. Let me assure you, you would absolutely never attempt to take a 4.5 metre wide boat through a 3 metre wall of water in a 7.5 metre gap. There's no way. So if you were lucky enough to go through, you would have seen it pretty much completely flat without much flow at all. But it was agreed upon by all tourism companies in 2022 that we would no longer operate through that gap and just get nice and close to the outside instead. Reason being, there are some very much sacred sites within that inland sea. I've never been there or seen them myself, but I did a charter about 2 weeks ago, myself and Tommy, with 15 traditional owners on board who were coming up to spend a bit of time out on country and reconnect with their culture. And they've shared some snippets of what's within that inland sea with permission to share with you folks. So off to the western side, there's a cave. It's about 60 metres deep into the escarpment, and it's quite clearly a burial ground where elders would be laid to rest. But it contains some of the oldest and most well-preserved rock art that you'll find in the Kimberley. Rock art that's estimated to be about 20,000 years old. There's women's business sites, which are women's business only, nothing for me to have anything to do with or go and visit. But knowing what we know about Aboriginal culture, we can respectfully assume things like birthing places, where the ladies would bring new life into the world and celebrate with ceremonies and traditional customs and things like that. Now, we are very much more than welcome to be here today, folks. We have the blessings of those traditional owners to be exploring, but myself, Tommy, the rest of the crew, we showcase this area with really great respect for that culture, and knowing that it is a privilege to be here and to showcase it on behalf of the Garaanngaddim people. So no matter which way you look at this area, folks, whether it be scientifically, culturally, the history of the place, it's an absolutely phenomenal part of the world that we're experiencing this morning. Pretty awesome, hey?
Yep.
Did anybody have any questions at all, folks? Anything about the science I just spoke about, or anything you see, feel free to fire away.
Is the gap getting wider for erosion?
Is the gap getting wider from erosion? Great question. So they've been tracking the width of the gaps since about the mid-1970s now, and in that time, about 50 years, they haven't gotten any wider. Not at least a measurable difference anyway. The geological theory is that these originally were certainly formed by erosion and would have started as a pinhole at one stage, hence why the narrow gap is less than half the width of the wide gap there. It's probably a few million years behind. I won't talk too much about the geology just yet, because we're going to have a specific little relaxing cruise for that later on. But you're looking at some of the oldest and most hardened sandstone that you can see on the planet. So certainly not very prone to erosion anymore. Great question.
Would you imagine crocs migrating in and out of here?
Yep, we've seen it happen.
Yeah.
We've seen it happen. You see fish, you see eagle rays jumping through, turtles, dolphins, pretty much everything.
Dolphins going through the gaps?
Dolphins going through the gaps, maybe
Okay.
not necessarily looking like that, but certainly going with the incoming or the outgoing tide. And yeah, you see crocodiles quite literally swimming through the gaps when it's a bit slacker than what it is now.
Yeah,
There's really thick mangrove forests in the east and western arms of this bay, so a lot of crocs up there for sure. Yep.
Sharks?
Sharks, yep. We're going to do a bit of a marine show for you folks later on, where you'll have the chance to have a dip in the Talbot Bay waters in the protection of a shark cage, and hopefully get some sharks to come up and say hi, which most of the time they do. We get them nice and revved up with a bit of food, and I'll chat about all the beautiful marine life we have here in very healthy waters up here.
Okay.
Any other questions at all, team?
On the incoming tide, do
Yep.
you just see flat water?
Nah, so the incoming tide is just as ferocious and has just as much of a change in height, just flowing in the opposite direction. So yesterday afternoon, Tommy and I were here, and as I said, it wasn't a 3 metre wall of water pouring towards us, but you sit right at the top and watch it dropping away. Between me and you folks, I think the outgoing tide, what we're seeing now, is the better spectacle, the better of the two. It's awesome to sit at the top and watch it falling away, but it's not quite the same as seeing that wall of water right in front of you. So I think the outgoing tide's a better show, but there's certainly no difference in terms of the flow. Yep. David Attenborough actually came here for a second visit after his first time in 1996. He came back in 2013 on the equinox tide. So he managed to get himself to the wide gap there on the biggest tidal variation of the year, and timed it when it was at its peak flow, maximum potential of what it could reach. And they measured the depth with their dive team when it was nice and flat, obviously, about 35, 40 metres deep in that wide gap. Width is about 20 metres, and the speed of the water on the surface at its peak flow is about 38 kilometres per hour, which is insane. Imagine if the tide started coming in at home at the beach at 38 k's per hour. You'd think a tsunami was coming. But from those calculations and those numbers, I'm sure there was a bit more to it, but they were able to work out that there's well over 1 million litres of water per second that move through that wide gap when it's at its peak flow. So 60 million litres a minute being forced through, which is hard to comprehend, but it's nature at its absolute very best, to be honest. It's phenomenal.
It's only second to like someplace in Canada, right?
Yeah, so the biggest tides in the world, only tide bigger than Derby is the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia, Canada. So they recorded a tidal variation in 2018. Their biggest tide on record was 16.3 metres, is the difference between high and low tide. So that's starting to get into the territory of a 4 or a 5 story building being completely underwater in a 6 hour period. It's phenomenal. They had their biggest tide of the year a couple of days ago. This year was only about 15 metres, but massive, absolutely ginormous. Alrighty team, well I reckon some of you might be pretty keen for a tea or a coffee and a bit of breakfast. That sounds pretty good right now after what we just witnessed. So we're going to start making our way back towards the pontoon, and you'll be able to slow things down and relax for the next half an hour over a bit of brekkie. There is only one way to get back there, team, so hold on and enjoy one last ride. But I hope you've all enjoyed having a look at Garaanngaddim, the Horizontal Falls, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
as I said, team, we're going to direct you upstairs to where you'll be sitting down and enjoying some breakfast for the next half an hour or so. The ladies up there will introduce what we've got, and there's tea and coffee and all that good stuff. So if you want to leave your bags downstairs where they are, you're more than welcome to, or bring them up if you need them, totally up to you. After breakfast, team, we're going to come up and let you know when it's time, but we'll give you the chance to pop your bathers on, and we'll do a bit of a marine show after breakfast. So as I said earlier, we got a nice protected shark cage, and it'll give you the chance to cool off in the water a little bit. It's already warming up now, so nice chance to refresh, and then hopefully get nice and close and personal with some pretty cool marine life. So even if you're not going for a swim, you'll get some great photos, some great fun facts, and a really good look at those sharks if they decide to rock up, which majority of the time they certainly do. Following that, team, we'll pop the life jackets back on and we'll go for another little cruise. This one will be a bit more of a slow and relaxing amble compared to the Horizontal Falls, but we're going to make our way a bit further down our Cyclone Creek system. So the rock formations out here are pretty cool, but down there they're absolutely stunning. You'll see some amazing layers throughout the sandstone, and I'll talk a little bit about how the Kimberley formed and how it came to be, which is incredibly fascinating. After that, team, we'll be saying goodbye to those of you on the half-day tour. So those of you on the half-day tour will be enjoying a beautiful low-level scenic flight back across the Buccaneer Archipelago and then along down the Dampier Peninsula, which I dare say will be one of the highlights of your tour out here. So something to look forward to after your adventures out here are wrapped up. Then those of you on the full-day tour, you'll be hanging around for a little bit longer, having a bit of morning tea and spending a bit more time with us before heading across to Cygnet Bay. So plenty more action and adventure planned for your day, folks. Now, I'll just mention very quickly that lower houseboat deck that you see there where you popped your life jackets on, that's our emergency muster station if we were to have something happen while you're on board today, which is highly unlikely. But if you hear a fire alarm, somebody yelling muster, 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 anything like that, just keep that lower houseboat deck in mind and try and move towards that location if you can, but there'll be plenty of staff around to assist. And that's pretty much it from me for now, folks. Just treat this pontoon like it's a floating pontoon, because that's what it is. Just watch your step, be ready for it to start rocking around a little bit, and take your time up and down those staircases and things like that. But straight up the stairs to where you can see the ladies up there for breakfast once you're back on the dock, folks, and we'll grab those life jackets for you at the top of the ramp.
Nice.